I think it's absolutely energizing and it's a joyful way to teach, so if you're out there and you're just like so tired of everything and you're just had it with, not being able to get kids to practice and you're just exhausted from the whole thing, I would just recommend that you try this. It could just be the thing that brings you back to life, brings you back to the reason why you started this in the first place.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. You're listening to episode number 105, and if you're one of my Inner Circle piano teaching community members, a very special welcome, as always, to you. My name is Tim Topham, your host for the show, and if this is your first time here, thank you so much for tuning in. I definitely recommend you subscribe because we have lots of great content coming up as we are stuck right in the middle of group teaching month this month. And then next month, little sneak peek, we're going to be talking all about oral, so using your ears, playing by ear, and all of those kind of good things. The Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is a place where you can get weekly inspiration, ideas, business, and teaching strategies to help support your teaching and grow your studio. And remember that the best place to listen to podcasts like this is on your phone as you drive, cook, exercise, walk the dog. Chuck on the podcast app on your phone, search for Creative Piano, and subscribe. You'll automatically be notified when new episodes go live. And thanks to everyone who has left reviews recently on Facebook and iTunes. I really appreciate all your feedback. Find out how you too can support the work I'm doing by leaving a review at timtopham.com/review. To access today's links and a transcript, as always, all you need to do is type in the episode number after my web address. Too easy, timtopham.com/episode 105. This podcast is brought to you by The Inner Circle, the world's leading professional development and training community for piano teachers. Inner Circle members get access to an extensive library of courses, teaching videos, lesson plans and downloads that cover everything you need to know to not only teach piano creatively and inspire students of all ages and abilities, but also to support you in building your own studio. On top of that, you get access to weekly online member masterminds, member discounts on products, services, software, and even sheet music, plus our active community forums, which aren't on Facebook, so you don't get so distracted, and where you can get advice and input from me, and also hundreds of fellow piano teachers and a handpicked team of experts, including my guest today, from all around the world. If you're serious about expanding your teaching repertoire, building a studio if you're just starting, learning the best strategies to motivate and inspire students, then the Inner Circle is the place to be. You can find out more about the Inner Circle at timtopham.com/community. And remember that you can use the code Piano Podcast to take $100 off an annual subscription, locked in for the life of your membership. Okay, today's podcast continues this month's theme of group teaching with a close look at the process involved in converting your studio from private one-on-one lessons to a variety of possible group teaching formats. If you've ever considered whether this is the right move for you and your teaching business, then today we'll be covering some of the pros and cons, the mindset required of a group teacher, the business impacts, and of course some tips on the actual process of changing over for those who are ready to get started. And this comes at a perfect time this month because my guest today and I will be running a free 1-hour live training on this topic at the end of this month in about a week's time, when you'll be able to see this process in action and ask as many questions of us as you'd like. To reserve your place for that training, keep this address in mind, timtopham.com/training. You can go there now and reserve your seat. Actually, don't go there now because you're listening to this. After you finish listening to this, you can go there, timtopham.com/training. My guest today has been teaching piano, mentoring teachers, and helping others build group piano programs for well over 20 years. Her 2 music schools in South Texas are focused on creating positive and enjoyable group piano lessons for students of all ages. She is also founder of Pedagogy in Motion, LLC, a publishing company that provides piano curriculum and group training for music teachers and features the wildly popular Way Cool keyboarding program, which is just perfect for modern teaching. She is also a director of the Music Mentor Group, who we featured back in podcast number 92 on the big picture of studio planning. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, Debra Perez.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
So firstly, how on earth do you do all of the things that you do, Debra? You must have the most packed schedule I would have ever seen.
I have a packed schedule. I have a lot of wonderful people helping me. I've learned as I've grown and gotten, more responsibilities to hire good people that can stand next to me and help.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it, to share around particularly as you grow any business, to start sharing around those responsibilities so that you can keep on looking at the bigger picture, I guess. And that's how probably you've been able to not only have music schools and retail outlets for piano sales, but also publishing and now the mentoring. It's phenomenal all that you do. So thank you. So can you give us just a little bit of background on your own experience teaching groups and how your music studios look at the moment? How many teachers do you oversee and how many students and that sort of thing?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, it's been a really fun journey for me. I remember when I went to work on my master's degree, that's where I started being exposed to group piano, and I just loved it from the very start. I just thought, this is so cool. But it was a long time ago, and I was deep into preparing my classical, recitals, and it was just kind of off on the side. But then later on, after I left, my first job in the university also included teaching class piano. And so that was my first time teaching in a big lab with the lab controller and all that good stuff. But I liked it. And I became really comfortable with that style of teaching. Then when I left the university world and decided I thought I could build something outside of there, that's when I really started getting into it, working with adults, a lot of adults, and then children. And one year I applied for a competition, and I didn't even know what I was doing, but I made this video, and it's actually it's a VHS tape.
VHS. Goodness, I haven't heard that for a while.
Remember. Yeah. I found it out in the garage.
Oh, wow.
I'll have to watch it somehow. But, I just
have to hire
myself.
something from a museum to be able to watch it now.
Oh, ouch. So I made this thing, and I actually won. I won the competition, and it was just one of those moments where I thought, maybe this is something I should really get into. And that really was a turning point for me. And I began then to build our programs. Then I began to be acknowledged and started presenting at the conferences and things like that. And I think initially I got acknowledged because we grew very quickly to about 500 students, 2 locations, and it was all group piano. So now, fast forward. And so we're averaging in the 2 locations. Each location has about 30, 35 classes a week going on right now. And we teach all ages. And since I started the whole thing by myself, just me and one class, and then it just kept growing, I had to then begin to think about how I was going to train teachers to be able to do what I was doing. And, teachers would look at what I was doing and they would be interested, but they had no experience, So then that's when I started putting together a mentoring program where I would hire people and have them come watch me teach, have them team teach with me, and I would train them and then turn them, over to their own classes. And so I still do that, which is why probably half of my teachers right now on staff are college students, usually like junior and seniors in college.
And I imagine back then.
So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Back when you started too, there wouldn't have been a huge amount of resources available to teachers for curriculum. I had Mayron Cole on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she was one of the pioneers back then as well. But were you at the same time creating your own resources, I imagine just scraps of paper here and there, and I'll use a bit of this and that, which eventually formed the books that you use now?
Yes. Yeah. It eventually formed the pedagogy behind the whole thing.
Right.
Yes, I was grabbing stuff and I tried everything on the market. I learned a lot from everything, but I felt like I learned some things that, we could implement that might help. And so, yeah, I was grabbing from everywhere, just writing stuff and making stuff up. And then when I met Will Bailey and told him what I was thinking and doing, and he wrote some compositions for me to look at, I was like, oh, thank you. I was so thrilled.
They're
like,
so
okay,
good.
let me just throw away. Yeah, let me throw away my little scraps of paper. And so we decided to partner and work together. And it really made a big difference in our school, because up to then, just because I was grabbing for every direction, that meant all my teachers were too. But once we published and started putting together the adult, the teens, the kids program, we were able to unify and turn it into more of a school, with a program. Made a big difference. Yeah.
And I've used your Way Cool keyboarding books with one-on-one, in a one-on-one setting as well, particularly with teenagers, beginners, as a way of getting them into playing stuff that sounds cool and learning to read at the same time without sort of the baby pictures and all that kind of stuff. And these awesome your backing tracks. I assume did Will make them, or did you have them created? So good.
No, he did. Yeah, he's amazing. He's a great arranger. And, I'm so happy that they're just very musical, and, they're not click tracks, they're just really super.
And I love that it's all chord symbol based. So students are learning about chord shapes. You introduce sus chords, which are, suspensions, one of my favorites, really early. Kids love that sound. And it's so simple. But you put it into this pedagogical context, which just makes so much sense. So we'll talk a little bit more about your own resources a little bit later on. But what I did want to ask is about mindset first up, because I think these two types of teaching are really different. What would you say is the mindset teachers need to have for a successful group teaching studio?
Wow, that's a great question. A couple of things popped to my mind right away. And the first thing is that it is not for everyone. I mean, it is not a style of teaching that will fit everyone. And that's fine. So someone could actually, take the course that I'm doing and look at all the stuff you've done. And they could just not feel in their heart that they were comfortable teaching that way. And that would be fine.
Totally cool.
It's very cool. And I can tell you really awesome, I could mention a couple of really well-known educators in our world that, have thanked me for what I'm doing, but say it's not for me, so we can respect one another and, respect that there's more than one way to do this and go on about it. So I think that's important. So no one should feel bad if it's not resonating with them. Some of the things that are different is, just this idea of standing in front of 4, 6, 8 people to teach. If you've been teaching privately one-on-one, which I did for many years, I had 40 students coming in and out every week. And so I know what that's about. And so you get real focused, and I think there's quite a bit of micromanaging in those kind of settings. In group teaching, you don't micromanage. Matter of fact, it's like a lot of give and take. You're a facilitator. The thing flows around the room, so that's a different mindset. To be able to put some information out there, teach them some concepts, and then just step back and just let them kind of work it out, and then come back in when they need you. And I've had a lot of teachers tell me that just getting a hold of that was very freeing for them. That it just, that might be one of the reasons I noticed that when teachers start teaching this way and they get a hold of that, they're just like happy about it. It's that they're saying that they're having fun, right? They're having fun. And so that's kind of neat.
And very important. Let's face it. If we're not having fun enjoying the teaching we're doing, then, why are we doing it? Exactly. Yeah. I must say, it resonates with me too. I've been a classroom teacher for many years, and the most exhausting teaching I've ever done is one-on-one teaching, because you never stop. You are on the ball, on the go, all the time. And interesting you use this word micromanagement. I haven't thought about that, but I get the concept of, we're just always in and trying to do things. Whereas in a classroom situation, of course, we step back and we introduce a concept and the students have time to process it. And we have time to pause for a second to take a breath, which you never get in a one-on-one class. And so they are really, really different situations. What the other thing, of course, which you haven't touched on, is the classroom management, and that can be a big issue for teachers.
Oh, yes, especially young teachers. I see them having more challenges than older teachers for some reason, but maybe because they haven't had children yet or something. I don't know. But still, and I've been thinking about this a lot as I've been putting the course together, is that if you keep children busy, like your classroom should be designed so that they're challenged and they're moving and they're busy and they're involved and they're focused, so that 45 minutes or 50 minutes is, it doesn't give them much wiggle room to be too crazy,
right?
And then you have to set your boundaries up pretty strong, but in love, gentle but strong, and that they know what's going to be okay and what's not. And then just, work with it. I think with music, and I learned this from classroom teachers. If you watch a classroom general music teacher, she walks into the class, he walks into the class. First thing they start doing is start singing something, and they do rhythms and they do echo play, and the kids just they just draw them in.
Yeah.
There's not, they're 8 years old. They don't stand up in front of the class and say, now today we're going to do this and this and this and this, and just keep talking. And the kids are like, no, they get them involved.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's very important. Same time, we do come across a lot of hyperactive children. That's real. And I tell the teachers too that they got little guys that just can't sit down, just let them stand up. I don't care. They can stand up at the bench, and when their legs are at the piano and their legs get tired, they'll sit down.
Right.
But that's one of the battles you don't really need to fight. But it is true. There will be little boys, little girls, older boys, that they're just hyperactive. And so here's my take on that. So I think we don't know what's going on in people's lives before they come to us. We don't know how that person's day went, what happened at school. We don't know when was the last time they ate a decent meal, if they had a candy bar in the car right before they got out. We just don't know,
Right.
So I think my job is, they're in the room with me. I want them to know that they're awesome and special, and that I'm going to teach them how to play the piano, and that everybody's equal in the room. See,
Right.
I think at school, everybody knows who's the smartest. Everybody knows who reads the best, who sports the best. Everybody knows. It's obvious. And the teachers kind of sometimes can support that. So that's not allowed in my classrooms.
Right.
Everybody's created equal.
Yeah. No, it's a great approach, and obviously scheduling and organizing groups has a lot to do with that, and hopefully we'll be able to touch on that in a moment. I'm interested to know. I want to ask you about the positives about moving to group and the group teaching format for three different stakeholders: parents, students, and the teacher. Maybe one or two dot points for each. So should we start with the students first? What are your biggest positives for the students? If you could narrow, I know there's lots, but if we can narrow it down to your top one or two.
Well, the first one is the collaboration, the community, the sharing. That to me is that's the main thing it's all about. And so that's the most important thing to me. And then I think the second to me is that if we can pull more kids in and at least expose them to music in a positive, fun learning environment, there's a chance that our world could be better. That there'd be people when they get older that maybe appreciate music more. And so I think those are the two things that motivate me.
That's brilliant. Sends shivers down the spine, Deborah.
Yeah.
It's great. That's what it's all about. What about one or two points for how parents like this and see the positives in it?
Well, I'm only going to say one, and that is that what do the parents want? They just want their kids to want to come and play and learn, right? That they don't want to have to fight them at home and drag them and stick them in the car and, fuss with them all the way and make them get out and go to music lessons. I mean, they want them to want it. So if you can make something happen in that classroom that those kids, I don't care what age they are, it's the same thing for adults. My adult students come back because they love the experience. I mean, I know they like me and everything, but the experience we have in that hour drives them back every week.
Right.
And the same thing would work with teens and kids. So parents want that to happen. Like they want the kid to want to come and go home, experience music, and come back. So
yeah, no, it's a great point. And hopefully the parents are perhaps a little bit less nagging at home, because maybe the kids will practice a bit more because, again, there's that group situation. There's probably a little bit of positive competition in the group. They know they're going to have to play in front of people. So maybe they do a bit more practice too. Parents don't have to nag so much. I would imagine that's the case.
Yeah, and I think bringing that up too just reminds me that we have to keep educating the parents too. We don't send home assignments. We send home these sheets that are called Music Time at Home. And they're like, here's what we've been doing. Here are some things you can do at home to reinforce and experience this yourself at home.
Right.
So the more we can do that, the less fussing will go on at home.
Yeah, understand. And what about one or two of the big positives for teachers?
I think it's absolutely energizing and it's a joyful way to teach. So if you're out there and you're just like so tired of everything and you're just had it with, not being able to get kids to practice and you're just exhausted from the whole thing, I would just recommend that you try this. It could just be the thing that brings you back to life, brings you back to the reason why you started this in the first place.
Brilliant.
Right.
So good.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try and add to that. It's just so spot on. All right. So what about for those teachers? They're drained. They've had enough. What does the process look like for changing over? How on earth do you start this process off?
Well, they'll get most of the detail in the course I'm making for you.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, because it is a process. And I think it starts with doing what we're doing here right now is just education. And it's just finding out what the options are, finding out, what this looks like to teach group and why and all that. Because has to happen first. And then you have to make a decision. So if this is ringing, you're hearing all this stuff and, in your heart, you're going, this is what I've been looking for. Then you're ready to make the decision, right? And then you look at the different types of groups that are available and figure out what's comfortable for you to do. So when I started our program, I was the founder of the school, right? And so I made a decision based on, I did my research. I looked around the city and I knew the music teachers and I found out that no one was teaching group. And I found out, first of all, that most teachers weren't that interested in working with adults, especially beginners. And I wanted to teach group. And so I made the decision that I'm not going to teach private. I'm going to teach group in this program. And then just kept growing from there. And along the way, I had the choice of adding private, but I decided not to. I made the decision, this is going to be a group teaching facility, period. So that was right for me, but it may not be right for everyone. They may want to do, smaller groups. Maybe that's all they could start with is smaller groups. I think the most important thing is just start bringing people together.
Right.
Bring students together to make music, whatever that looks like. And, it could be large, it could be small, it could be every other week, whatever, but start doing that.
And you'll soon get an idea as a teacher whether that's for you. So if you, let's say, once a month or even as a one-off, you just said, all right, in a month's time on a Sunday, we're going to have 3 lots of groups come together for an hour and a half, and we're going to do some games, and we're all going to play and do a little improvising or something together for that time. you'd pretty soon get an idea of whether that format's going to be right for you. So a little bit of a test perhaps could be one way teachers could do that.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people have done. And because the teachers that we're talking to that are really ready to move it to the next space, which is weekly groups, they did taste that. And the kids, their own students, the feedback was like, oh, we love this. When are we having our group class?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I've heard that from a lot of teachers who've tried it out. The kids then push because they're having so much fun.
Yeah. So that's a good indication.
Yeah. And we've had a number of blog posts and podcasts about themes for group teaching last year, themes for summer camps. I mean, all of those kind of ideas can come together to help you put together a first little trial group session with your students. I mean, it could be even a masterclass. You'd probably want it a little bit more engaging than that. But, again, it's that idea of groups of people coming together. Yeah, masterclass is probably a bit of a dull way to do it. But so you'd want to make it more interesting than that. But I mean, that idea, just get a group of kids together, see how it all works out. So what if that goes really well? The kids are revved up. The parents go, wow, this is really, really cool. It's probably a little bit of a process, I'm assuming, that you need to go through with your parents in particular to outline the benefits, explain that you're making this change, everyone's in it. How would you recommend teachers go about that process?
Well, we know that people don't necessarily love change. So we got to have we got to have it straightened out in our own heads before we talk to them, because you need to be able to, start the conversation in a very positive way, but also realizing that you're now going to ask them to do something different. And so you have to be very patient and kind about it. But yes, educating them as to the benefits of group and, maybe so this semester's already started. So let's say you want to start in January. So I would take this semester to start prepping for that, start getting ready for that. Maybe have some groups form some ensembles that at the Christmas recital that, they're going to play together. So you can give them a taste of what it's going to sound like. So you've got time. You don't want to just it's in December and you tell the parents, well, in January when you come back, your child's going to be in a group Tuesday at 6:00. Not good. Can't do it that way. But you want to talk about the benefits for them. It's not about you going to teach less and make more. You cannot put that vibe out at all. Can't be about you. It has to be about them.
Yeah. And I imagine there will be parents who think that their kids are going to get less because they're not getting one-on-one attention. It would be like a classroom at a school going from everyone in school learns with one teacher. There's a 1-to-1 ratio. And then suddenly, now we're going to put 30 in a class and have one teacher. And then the parents would go, well, I should only be paying like a 10th or a 30th of what I was paying before. So how do you go about that argument?
Yes, and that's true that parents often think of it as equal to tutoring, like the one-on-one thing. The kids get that special attention. So again, you have to be able to talk about that. Don't try to avoid talking about it. I like to talk about it right up front. Even when we start brand new classes that are new people, beginners, we talk to the parent about that, because if it's in their mind, eventually it's going to come out in some fashion. So talking about how, first of all, group piano is not a new thing. It's been around for many, many years. Group learning as a music deal has been around for years, but colleges have used group piano, prep programs in colleges. It's not new, so that you can let them know that you're just not making this up. You've done your research, you've been studying and training and talking to people around the country, and it really is very popular. And, just explain that this is going to allow the opportunity for their children to work as a team and learn how to make music with others and, all that stuff.
So many benefits. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, you got to really talk those up. And then sometimes you have to kind of barter with the parents, because so I was fortunate. I started the program. We've always been group, and we've just been group, so I haven't had to take a private student and put them over the other direction. But I have talked to a lot of parents, that have said, I think my child really needs a private lesson, so I've had to deal with that too. But,
And how do you deal with that? Do you say, no, look, sorry, I teach in a group format and that's still, in my opinion, the best way for your child to develop? Or do you give them a few extra one-on-ones because they are getting behind?
No. No. But one of the things that I have the opportunity to do, since we have so many classes, is I can either say, why don't you guys come and watch a class and just see what you think after you're in the room? Or I could say, if you want to go ahead and join the class, then you don't have to pay until after you come a class and see.
Right. Okay.
It just
I was thinking more for a parent who, after a while, thinks, comes to you and says, I feel my child is getting behind. Can you give them some one-on-one?
Oh, yes. Well, yes, and I would do that. One of the things that I work with my teachers on is just to pay attention to signs that something is going on. And they're supposed to come to me right away. If one student doesn't show up, they're supposed to call them and let them know they missed them and send the lesson plan or connect with the parent. If they don't come back the second week, they're supposed to come talk to me so that I can intervene. And so then I'll talk to the person, to the parent, try to get to the bottom of what's going on. And sometimes it is that. Sometimes it is, all of his friends are taking private lessons and all that good stuff. So, the only thing I can do is try to bring out for her, because usually the parents haven't had lessons themselves, and so they don't really know. And so I just try to, again, sell the benefits. At the same time, sometimes the parents are the ones that make the decision, and so they can pull them out.
You can't win them all.
You can't win them all, no. And that's okay. That's okay, but we sure do try.
And yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that for a teacher shifting an entire studio over to group, even if you do it everything perfectly, you explain all the benefits, you do it well with a great lead time, there will still be parents who prefer not to continue with you. And I think you've got to accept that, right?
Yes. But I don't think it'll be many. I don't. And I think just keep going, get your groups going, get the energy up and very positive. And what will happen is that referral thing will start happening where friends will tell friends. Our teen program grew that way big time. We have a lot of teen classes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
People say teens, they can't find any teens. Well, we must have them all down here because they're here. But what happens is you get a couple good classes and then they tell their friends.
Yeah. That's actually a great point I hadn't thought of. When you're teaching one-on-one, your referral opportunity is one student and their parents. So you've just kind of got one person at a time for the hour that you've spent teaching or whatever it is. You put 6 in a room, you now have 6 kids, and if you do everything right, who are then telling all their friends how much fun they're having, you've now got 6 times the referral potential too, right? So that would increase both new inquiries and you would hope retention significantly for a studio.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It's kind of a numbers game, and I don't say that in a bad way. That's a good way. That's why even though let's say we have all of our classes full, we do not stop recruiting. We just keep going out and spreading the word. It's a constant thing. We never stop.
Right.
And then we just keep pulling more people in, because the more people you talk to, the more classes you'll have. It's kind of simple. That part of it's kind of simple.
Yeah, fantastic. And another option too, I guess, is that for someone who's just starting to just begin all new students in groups. I think I heard someone suggest that as a tactic. So keep on teaching your one-on-ones, and as attrition continues, that's fine. They'll move on. All your new ones, you put in groups together. Have you seen that work well before?
Yes, that's actually. I think you actually heard me say that.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, that's what I tell a lot of people.
Right.
Is first of all, you're going to do it. So stop taking private students.
Yep.
Just stop doing that. everybody's going to go into a group and just start forming your groups. So you say, okay, I'm going to have a kids class Tuesday at 6 and a kids class Thursday at 5:30. You got two choices. You start putting people in there, registering them, and pretty soon you've got your class.
Yeah.
And it's the only way you can do it. If you want to start making that shift, just keep your kids you got. Although every teacher I've ever worked with to make the change, the shift, they always had, 10 or 12 students that really needed to be in a group.
Right.
That they'd even had for maybe 2 years, but they really needed a group.
Yeah.
And so they would take those younger or less experienced, put them in a group too, maybe keep their intermediate students in private.
And as I chatted with Heather Nanny on Facebook Live last week, and she, like other people too, do something completely different, and that's just go cold turkey. They stop all their privates and then they start in group at the start of the next semester. And she did that over the fall holiday, your summer break, and came back and they were all in group.
Yep.
So you can do it that way as well. I know she had to do a lot of planning and spend a lot of summertime preparing for how it's going to work, but that's been really successful for her. Yeah, so there's many ways to do this.
Yep.
So let's talk briefly about scheduling and forming groups. Do we do same age kids, same ability kids? Can you mix up ages? How does all that work?
So what I do is ideally try to get similar ages together. Okay. So we have 2 and 3 year olds together, 4 and 5, 6 and 7. We're using Way Cool Kids with 6 and 7. As those two ages together work really well. And then 8, 9, and 10. And then we have preteens and teens. So we try, that's our basic starting place. Mm-hmm. And of course, all beginners go that way. And then also we'll have people come to us with their children that they've had a year somewhere else. But when I explain to them that our program is different than the private lesson they've had and the chords and all that stuff, I can usually convince them to just let them start with book 1. Right. And they're happy with that.
Okay. Yeah, so, I was going to say, what if you get a parent bringing a 7-year-old who's had 4 years of piano already or something? I'm sure that doesn't happen too often, but would you then, you'd put them, the goal is like a class in more ways. So you're getting kids of the same age because then you build that community and they're having fun with their friends type of thing as well as learning.
Yes. Yeah. And usually there's not that big. It might be a year or 2 at the most that they've had here and there and, kind of disconnected learning experience. So we can just put them in with beginners. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And then adults, I think we have the biggest adult program around. I mean, we've had thousands of people go through our adult program. And I think when I first started on that whole project, I was on in 2007. Everywhere I went, most people thought adult groups were going to be retired people that could come during the day so they could fill up their daytime. But wasn't my story. And I'd been doing it for years and had already, grown the program pretty large. 85% maybe of our adults they're professional people coming after work. And it's their 20s and their 30s and 40s. They're just any age adult. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you start opening that mindset, oh my goodness, you'll start finding students all over the place. Mm. Yeah.
And
adults.
Well, I love teaching adults, but I often find they are hard to retain because life gets in the way so easily for so many of them. And I wonder if, again, having the group of people, they would build some friendships, some relationships. Again, it's a little bit like going to the gym with a friend, perhaps. You're more likely to go if someone else is standing there looking at their clock while you arrive late, sort of thing, right? It helps maintain your desire to practice and keep involved.
It's called accountability.
Exactly. Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah, accountability. Yes, and they miss each other when they're not there. And it's not that they go out like after class and go hang out or something, but it's that experience in the room with these people that they've become friends with, this music that we're making for an hour. They really like it. The other thing, I thought about this when you were just talking just now. We have an open door policy. So what that means, this works super well with adults. So you got a tax accountant guy in your class, and it's tax time, and he's just like, I can't come to class. And so I'm like, fine, that's cool. Just go do your thing. The door's open. Come back when you can. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When you do that, they come back. And that's because we're moving this thing in a class setting with concepts and different types of things that he can be gone for a month and come back and he's fine.
Right. Yep. And you need to have that flexible approach, particularly with adults, I've found.
You do. You do.
Brilliant. Well, look, we should start wrapping things up. I think we've covered some of those main points that I wanted to cover. And just going back to reiterate, I think your main sort of concept with regard to this changing to group piano is, number one, start thinking about it early. Make that decision. And when you've made that decision, then that starts a process of at least 2 or 3 months of convincing parents and explaining how it's going to work and what's going to happen, all that kind of stuff. And then making that change and just, planning for it, understanding that you're going to have some epic fails. Things aren't going to work, but you're going to have heaps of fun in the meantime. It's just going to be an amazing experience. Have I summed that up pretty well?
Pretty well.
I know we're simplifying a really challenging concept, but
it is. And for that, I just want to say one more thing to add to that is that I have been doing this a while. I have worked with a lot of people, a lot of stores, schools, individuals, and the ones that made it work were the ones that had already made the decision that they were going to make it work. The people that I've worked with over the years, and they said, yeah, we're going to try this a while, and 6 weeks goes by and it's not going quite like they are. And they're like, I didn't think it was going to work. It never works. So that's why I'm just so sure that the decision has to be made. And once you really, it's who you feel like you are as an educator, to include that in your offerings as an educator. If you believe that it's that important, you'll make it happen.
So tell us quickly about your own products. We've talked about Way Cool keyboarding. There's a whole series, I think, right?
Yes, we've got 3 programs that were written for group piano. They were designed in a group setting, tested in a group setting for years, and then published for groups. Although, as you mentioned, we do have a lot of teachers around the country using them for private as well. But they were written for groups, so that means if you are using group, then they'll make sense to you and they'll work in your group. So we have for adult hobbyists, I call them. There's 6 books and 2 supplementaries that go with that, and takes adults from being what I call beginners to people who can play. And then we have Way Cool keyboarding, which is kind of labeled for teenagers, but our adults love it too. Matter of fact, all my adult classes through the years have also played the Way Cool stuff also. They love it. And then we have Way Cool keyboarding for kids, and same kind of philosophy, same teaching style, but more age appropriate for that age. And since it is a different way of teaching, with the chords and learning to read and the improvisation and all that stuff packaged into one package, and then it's group, I do once a year hold a 3-day training seminar in our Corpus Christi store and studio, so that you can come and just kind of hang out and see what it looks like in real life and just kind of immerse yourself in it. And we get into it pretty deep for 3 days. And then I also do a lot of online webinar training with people around the country as well. A lot of schools I'm working with, colleges, high schools, music stores. And it keeps me busy.
Yeah, and it's the reason why I was so happy to have you firstly involved in the webinar next week, when we're going to go into more depth on this and again have that opportunity for teachers to ask questions, but also to have you create this incredible course about group teaching, a modern group teaching studio in my Inner Circle community area. And we're going to be talking more about that at the webinar too, so you'll get a taste for exactly what's in there. And you are such a master of webinars and that style of teaching. So friendly, warm, engaging. Anyone can do this when Debra Perez is teaching it, I think. But also to see you teaching classes live. You teach. There's videos of you teaching students, videos of you teaching other teachers. It's phenomenal. So I can't wait to tell people more about that at the webinar. So the webinar is next week. It's Thursday, the 28th of September, 8 p.m. Eastern, which is 5 p.m. Pacific, and that's Friday, the 29th of September, 10 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australia time. So to reserve your seat for that, head to timtopham.com/training. You can do that right after we finish this podcast. Grab your seat for that, and I'll make sure I email you some reminders so you don't miss out. And Debra, where do people find your fantastic books?
At musicalmomentsrmm.com.
Brilliant.
musicalmomentsrmm.com.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can find out more about that nice and easily. The show notes for this episode will be at timtopham.com/episode 105. And next week, we're continuing this with one of your friends, actually, Debra. Susan Ogilvie is on the show to talk all about keyboard ensembles. And this, I've recorded this interview already, and I can tell you, if you're not convinced about the merits of group teaching by the end of this episode, forget it. Nothing's going to convert you. So it was so much fun. I'm
so happy that you got to talk with her. She's been my inspiration for many years. I admire her. Her work is amazing. Very inspirational.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. There's, I won't say any more about it. Just make sure you tune in to episode 106 next week. Debra, I can't thank you enough for your time. Thank you so much for joining us today, and in advance for next week too.
My pleasure. I'm honored to do this. It's awesome. I'm having a blast.
That's so good. And we can feel your passion and energy. So lovely to speak with you again today. And we'll speak to you really, really soon. See you next week, guys.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.